In the early hours of Wednesday, while most of the people in Israel were still asleep, air raid sirens suddenly blared in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Netanya. 25 ballistic missiles were launched simultaneously from Iranian territory, 2 volleys just minutes apart, targeting civilian centers and strategic infrastructure in Israel. Although the Arrow 3, Iron Dome, and David's Sling defense systems coordinated to intercept nearly all of them, the explosions and flashes of light in the sky alone were enough to jolt residents awake in panic. For the first time in nearly 10 years, Iran launched a large number of missiles as a show of deterrence capability. However, the reality shows that the attack caused no casualties, further highlighting that Israel's defense system is operating with near-perfect precision. Nevertheless, psychologically, Iran succeeded in causing a sleepless night and evoking memories of the missile crisis from the Gulf War era. But it was precisely that night, while the world was still guessing Tel Aviv's response, that the sky over Tehran suddenly lit up with intense explosions. A series of videos circulating on social media showed smoke rising from the Imam Hussein University area, believed to be a key research and military command center of the IRGC. In Shiraz and Karaj, large columns of fire erupted from a missile factory and ammunition depot, indicating that this was no longer a typical retaliatory strike, but the beginning of a campaign aimed at devastating Iran's war infrastructure. Early this morning, the spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces officially announced that Israel has launched Phase 2 of Operation Rising Lion, a multi-layered offensive targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure, military command centers, and logistics hubs. The spokesperson emphasized, "We are not just defending, we are reclaiming control over the entire region's strategic space." The event did not just unfold in a military retaliation atmosphere, it also opened a serious geopolitical front. The US president held an urgent phone call with the Israeli prime minister, reaffirming full support. An implicit message was revealed from the White House: there will be no ceasefire unless Tehran permanently halts its nuclear program. Almost simultaneously, intelligence reports indicated that a US air task force consisting of B-2 Spirits, F-22 Raptors, F-35S, and KC-46 refueling aircraft was departing Diego Garcia Island and entering the airspace south of Iran. There was no mistake when the bombers carrying the $15 million GBU-57 bunker buster bombs began to take off. A strategic message was being written in fire and steel. Tehran is in a state of panic. People are crowding to leave the city through the northwestern gateways in District 18, home to many military research facilities. The IDF issued an evacuation warning before noon as a form of direct psychological strike. Instead of a surprise attack, Israel demonstrated such a high level of control that they could notify the target in advance, yet still hit their mark. Within 24 hours, Israel shifted from a defensive stance to taking control of the skies, pushing Iran into a strategic defensive position both militarily and politically. Although war has not been officially declared, the entire Middle East has entered a pre-war state. Those missiles launched that night not only marked the beginning of a series of airstrikes, but also officially opened a new chapter in the Israel-Iran confrontation, one where technological power, intelligence, and strategic deterrence will determine the outcome. Immediately following the night of the attack on Tehran, the skies over Iran were no longer peaceful. For 6 consecutive days, precise, deliberate, and deterrent strikes were carried out by the Israeli Air Force across Iran, from Mashhad in the east to Natanz, Isfahan, and Shiraz. This was no longer a retaliatory attack, but a comprehensive campaign aimed at crippling Iran's entire warfighting capability. The F-35 Ayadir fighter jets, working in coordination with Hermes UAVs, create a continuous network of watchful eyes, detecting, assessing damage, guiding, and most importantly, exerting intense psychological pressure. IRGC units now find themselves uncertain whether their bases are being monitored, if their ammunition depots are still operational, or if their communication centers have been half destroyed. It is this very sense of insecurity that paralyzes their decision-making, a type of victory that requires no direct combat, yet still suffocates the opponent. Inside Iran, tensions reached a breaking point. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, retreated underground for the first time, handing over command to the IRGC Military Council. The national leadership apparatus fell into a state of fragmentation. One faction wanted to maintain a hardline stance, launching missiles, issuing threats, and playing the brink of war game. But the other side, consisting of economic and diplomatic advisors, understood clearly that if the conflicts dragged on for a few more weeks, Iran's economy could collapse completely. In the shadows, a ceasefire plan was secretly developed, involving European and American diplomats, with Oman acting as the mediator. The draft consists of 2 steps: a temporary 60-day agreement. Iran will halt all uranium enrichment activities and allow IAEA inspectors to return. A long-term agreement. Iran will cease support for militia groups such as Hezbollah, the Houthis, and proxy forces in Iraq and Syria in exchange for the gradual lifting of financial sanctions. However, when Tehran showed signs of stalling, delaying its response or issuing counter-conditions, Israel immediately launched a strategic counterattack. A Hermes UAV infiltrated Isfahan airspace and released a series of precision missiles targeting the IRGC military data center, destroying numerous hard drives and servers within just 30 seconds. At the same time, a hacker group, believed to be Predatory Sparrow, paralyzed Iran's largest banking system, completely shutting down all ATM transactions for 24 hours, triggering a panic-driven cash withdrawal frenzy. This attack didn't just target the infrastructure, it struck at people's trust. When citizens line up in long lines in front of non-functioning ATMs, and businesses can't conduct transactions because their data has been encrypted, Iran's arsenal, no matter how intact, can't help them control a society that's unraveling from within. Meanwhile, in Washington, the Pentagon proactively deployed an additional squadron of F-22S and F-15E Strike Eagles to Jordan and Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, to make it clear that the U.S. will not directly intervene in airstrikes, but is ready to prevent any retaliatory attacks from Iran against allied forces. This sends a very clear signal: Israel can continue its actions, while Iran must carefully consider any escalation. In international media, news outlets from CNN and Al Jazeera to Haaretz all use the same phrase to describe the current phase: a strategic pincer movement where the Israeli Air Force has locked down all directions, and Iran is forced to choose between negotiating from a position of weakness or facing a wave of deep strike air raids at a devastating scale. By the end of Day 6, more than 40 military facilities, weapons depots, radar stations, and communication posts had been completely or partially destroyed, including key locations in Karaj and the outskirts of Tehran. Iran has not responded publicly, but experts believe their command and control capabilities have been severely diminished, down to about 60% of their capacity before the campaign. At this pace, if the negotiation round does not yield results in the next few days, many military experts believe the next phase will be strikes on nuclear infrastructure, where the F-35Y is just the precursor for the Thor's hammer, the B-2 bomber carrying the 38,650-pound GBU-57. 3:30 a.m. on June 18th, the last quiet night at Isfahan Air Base, located in central Iran. This place was once considered a regional strategic base, home to the AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter squadron, one of the few forces still capable of responding to Israeli drones. But in that moment, the sky suddenly cracked open. A pair of F-35Y Adir fighter jets appeared at an extremely low altitude, activating stealth radar and terrain-following sensors, clearing the way for a formation of F-16Y Sufa jets carrying Delilah cruise missiles to fly terrain-hugging routes over the Zagros Mountains. Their Target 5 AH-1 Cobra helicopters, along with an ammunition depot and a landing zone in Isfahan. Intelligence data indicates that these helicopters are Iran's last blade capable of being deployed to intercept Israeli UAVs and aircraft operating deep within its territory. If they take off, they could inflict certain damage on airstrikes or special operations. Therefore, Israel did not wait. They struck first. As the formation approached the airstrike zone, a signal flashed from Iran's S-300 air defense radar, but it was too late. The F-35I immediately locked onto the target and launched a Spice 2000 missile equipped with a smart guided warhead, boasting a circular error probable of less than 10 feet. This strike not only destroyed the radar launcher but also wiped out the entire control unit inside the underground bunker, turning Iran's most advanced air defense system in the area into a pile of scrap metal. Once the flight path was completely cleared, two F-16 jets simultaneously launched 4 Delilah missiles with the ability to loiter and automatically detect targets. The Delilah missiles don't strike like typical ballistic missiles. Instead, they circle around, gathering real-time imagery, then choose the exact moment and the most vulnerable spot to hit. Less than 40 seconds later, 5 AH-1 helicopters, along with a 2.9-inch ammunition storage, exploded in a chain reaction, creating a massive fireball that lit up the night. Everything happened in under a minute. The remaining Iranian helicopter squadron was wiped out without a chance to take off. The entire process was recorded by a tactical UAV and transmitted to the command center in Tel Aviv. The video, yet to be officially released, is described as a scene of despair. Moments of helicopters burning like matches, guards fleeing in panic, and an IRGC flag falling, carried away by the night wind over Tehran. For those who have been following the campaign from the beginning, this was more than just an airstrike. It was a holy sword striking at the perfect moment, closing off Iran's aerial blockade because, since this attack, Iran no longer has any capability for active air assaults except for a few suicide drones which were also easily shot down by the Iron Beam system and Barak UAVs. In a press conference following the event, the spokesperson for the Israeli Ministry of Defense stated, "We don't need to send troops into Iran. We only need 12 pilots, 6 aircraft, and a few lines of code, and that's enough to take down an entire operational command center." At the same time, regional media outlets simultaneously reported a sudden surge in migration out of Tehran, with thousands of cars packed with personal belongings snaking along the Tehran-Qazvin highway. The scene was no different from wartime footage. People carrying young children, water cans, gas cans, and a sign that read, "I am not a soldier." Connecting back to the developments from Part 1 and Part 2, the strike on Isfahan was not an isolated action. It was a perfectly executed move within Israel's strategy of a psychological warfare, infrastructure, information battle plan. The strike was small enough to avoid provoking the United States, yet significant enough to stun and demoralize the IRGC. In the program, Boots on the Ground, journalist Yaakov Pinto described the strike as a symphony between the F-35I, the invisible auditory artist, the F-16I, the fiery warrior, and Hermes, the battlefield director. It's no coincidence that the campaign commander called that night the sanctified cut. After the news spread, Israeli defense sector stocks surged, while the global oil market reacted immediately. Brent crude prices surpassed $75 per barrel, indicating concerns over potential blockades in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, several Western governments publicly warned their citizens to leave Iran within 72 hours, signaling that airstrikes may continue or escalate to a higher level. From a precise strike, the Isfahan campaign triggered a massive psychological domino effect. For Tehran, there was nowhere left to hide. For Israel, they gained full control of the skies, and for the entire region, the night of June 18th could be remembered as the moment Iran lost half of its military heart. Tehran, 2 o'clock in the morning, no alarm sirens, no warnings, just the chilling roar of Israeli F-15Y jets streaking at extremely low altitude, tearing through the sky and striking straight at the heart of the enemy. Within seconds, explosions shook the entire Iranian capital, from the west side of Shiraz all the way to the eastern suburbs of Tehran. Military bases were shattered, air defense radars were disabled. Even the seemingly impregnable buildings of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were reduced to smoldering rubble. This unprecedented airstrike campaign is a clear sign Israel has officially entered a phase of comprehensive pursuit in Iran. From air bases within Israeli territory, dozens of elite squadrons led by the F-35 Wayadir and F-15I Ra'am were ordered to take off simultaneously. From the Red Sea, Israel's Sa'ar 6-class naval vessels stand ready to provide support with long-range interceptor missiles, forming a defensive shield over the entire western airspace. In just a few hours, over 100 military targets were destroyed. Notably, the long-range missile units prepared by Iran for retaliation were neutralized before they could be launched. According to the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the initial strikes destroyed approximately 120 surface-to-surface and surface-to-air missile launchers, which amounts to more than one-third of Iran's entire missile launch capability. Tehran's air defense system appears to have been completely incapacitated. In some areas like Natanz, Qom and Shiraz, the radar was only activated for a few seconds before being wiped out by precision-guided bombs. According to images circulating on Iranian social media, people saw Israeli fighter jets flying so low that they could clearly see the color of the pilot's helmet. There has never been a precedent for Israeli aircraft to fly so freely right within the airspace of a country considered a strategic rival. Panic erupted all across Tehran. Millions of residents fled the capital, causing extreme chaos on the highways connecting Tehran to nearby cities. The Iranian government immediately shut down the Tehran-Qom highway to stop the mass exodus. State television broadcast stations were forced to interrupt their transmissions because they were hit by bombs. At the same time, a scene shocked the entire world. During a live television broadcast in Tehran, as the announcer was reading the news, a loud explosion rang out, shaking the entire studio. The camera captured smoke and flames rising just behind the set, ceiling panels collapsing, and the host fleeing the scene. The video quickly went viral, causing global shock. Israel had directly struck the regime's central propaganda agency, a message to Iran's leadership that couldn't have been clearer. This was not only a devastating military strike, but also a powerful psychological blow. In less than 5 days since the direct conflict erupted, the Israeli Air Force had brought the fighting right into the political heart of Iran, something even major powers have previously been, cautious to attempt. Israel clearly declared, this is no longer a warning operation, this is the phase of choking off Tehran's military control. If the fiery airstrikes at night serve as a steel clamp tightening around Tehran from the outside, then the series of assassinations and eliminations of high-ranking commanders are the sharp dagger piercing the heart of the regime. Unprecedented in history, within just 72 hours, more than 20 Iranian generals, intelligence leaders, and battlefield commanders were taken out. Each name crossed off the list represents a severed link in the war management apparatus, and that is exactly what Israel is aiming for. At the center of the firestorm was General Ali Shadmani, the chief of war staff and the second most powerful figure in Iran's entire military command structure, ranking just below Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Appointed to command the armed forces during the war period after his predecessor Alam Ali Rashid was removed, Shadmani had once declared he would plunge Israel into darkness with 1,000 missiles. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, during an airstrike guided by a suicide drone and real-time intelligence data, his entire emergency command center, Qatam al-Anbiya, was completely obliterated. Shadmani's body was found beneath the charred concrete rubble, ending a nearly 40-year military career and delivering an irreparable shock to Tehran's command apparatus. However, this was just the starting point. Immediately afterward, a series of subsequent attacks took out numerous key figures from the battle. Mohammad Kazemi, the head of the entire IRGC intelligence force since 2022, was eliminated along with the deputy commander while meeting at a secret headquarters in Tehran. Mohsen Bagheri is the key figure linking the IRGC with Hamas and the Houthi armed groups. The commanders of the Quds Force, the unit responsible for Iran's covert operations abroad, have also gradually disappeared from the command map. Each strike is a deep cut into the nerve center of the Iranian regime, and if the elimination of just one of these generals in a single month was enough to cause a shockwave, then wiping out the entire senior command layer within a few days is, honestly, unprecedented. Like a brainless army, Iran's war coordination system has collapsed. Notably, these strikes are not random. They are based on deep intelligence that could only have been established after years of infiltration. Iranian media openly accuse Mossad has planted spies at the highest levels of the military system. The precision of the attacks, names of individuals, meeting locations, and exact timing cannot be coincidental. This is a blow marked by the hallmark of strategic surgery. The immediate impact is that Iran no longer has anyone to give orders. Supreme Leader Khamenei can call for an attack, but there's no one capable of carrying it out. Israeli intelligence revealed that Iran had planned to launch a barrage of 1,000 rockets at Israel, but the plan fell apart because there was no one left to push the button. Meanwhile, the remaining launchers are being aggressively hunted down by the Israeli Air Force. An IDF general said, "We're not letting them fire. We're going after those launchers themselves." This is not just a military campaign, it's a personnel elimination strategy. Over the past 2 nights, the US Navy in the Middle East has worked closely with Israel to intercept more than 30 drones, relying on the Aegis system and SM-6 missiles launched from destroyers. On top of that, experts believe the US played a key role in a cyber attack campaign that led to the collapse of Iran's SEPA banking system. Tens of millions of people suddenly found themselves unable to withdraw money or access their accounts, with digital transactions coming to a standstill. The impact even reached Iran's national power grid, and as Tehran struggled to respond to these defense efforts, Iran called for a ceasefire to negotiate. But, Israel responded right away, saying there could be no negotiations while bombs were still falling. Meanwhile, in Washington, the final decision still rests with President Trump. Based on recent signals, he faces a historic choice: either launch a precise airstrike campaign that could eliminate Iran's nuclear capabilities in just a few hours, or extend the campaign over several weeks, leaving Israel to manage the situation alone. The White House-affiliated media put it this way: if Trump decides, the strike force could take off within 6 hours. This was underscored by the US president's early departure from the G7 summit, as he explained, "Cannot wait any longer." President Trump even posted a direct warning to Tehran on social media, saying everyone should leave Tehran immediately. In this situation, just one strike by a B-2 or B-52 on the Fordow nuclear facility could honestly usher the world into a new chapter. A chapter where Iran, after decades of threats, would be permanently stripped of its dream of possessing an atomic bomb. And if that happens, the moment a bunker-busting bomb hits the ground in Iran will mark the end of the current regime. Tehran is no longer Tehran. The city that once stood as the power center of the Islamic Republic of Iran has now become a chaotic maze filled with smoke, fire, confusion, and despair. Senior spiritual leaders have been forced to evacuate into bunkers. People are fleeing in droves, creating traffic jams stretching for miles on the highways leading out of the capital. The internet has been cut off, ATMs are down, national television was blown up during a live broadcast. A nation that once held its head high is now on the brink of collapse. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the ultimate symbol of the regime, is reportedly no longer in control of the entire command system, and is currently isolated with his family in a bunker. International media reports that he has not made any public appearances for 3 consecutive days, a signal never before seen during a crisis. Although a portion of the missile storage remains intact, no one is capable of operating it anymore. So about 1/3 of the launch pads have been wiped out and dozens of missile storage facilities have been destroyed. Iran's counterattacks are now reduced to just a few scattered missiles, launched more for the sake of saving face than, causing any real strategic damage to Israel. From a strategic perspective, analysts believe that Iran has suffered an irreversible defeat. They have lost control of their airspace, lost the ability to coordinate, lost their entire command structure, and most importantly, lost their nuclear deterrent status, the factor that once made the entire Middle East wary. Israel has achieved something truly unprecedented, bringing the war right into the heart of Tehran and forcing the opponent to desperately plead for negotiations. And if the United States decides to deliver the final blow, a bombing campaign using B-2 bombers and bunker-buster bombs, the so-called Islamic Republic of Iran might only exist as a chapter in history books. The skies across the Middle East blazed with the glow of missile-fire air raid sirens wailing non-stop, and thick black smoke columns rising from the once peaceful neighborhoods of Tel Aviv and Tehran. A storm of war has suddenly erupted, bringing with it changes that could shake the regional and global order to its core. In less than a week, Israel launched its largest military campaign since the 2006 conflict, and this time the target is not Hamas or Hezbollah. The direct focus is on the Tehran regime. Names like Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan, and Parchin, once symbols of the Islamic regime's nuclear ambitions, are now nothing more than smoldering ruins. Satellite images show the protective domes over the reactors completely destroyed, while the uranium centrifuge facilities have been pulverized by precise stealth missile strikes. But it didn't stop there. Israel went further than ever before, directly targeting the top command structure of Iran. A series of swift assassinations, believed to have been carried out by Mossad, resulted in the deaths of more than 20 high-ranking Iranian generals and nuclear experts, including key leaders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.